Hey there, I'm Tracy Spears, speaker, author, coach, and host of Shift Out Loud. I am super excited to introduce you to Wally Schmader. Wally is the author of Full Contact Leadership, the co-author of What Exceptional Leaders Know, the Exceptional Leaders Playbook, and the co-founder of Exceptional Leaders Lab. He has developed programs and content that have influenced thousands of leaders worldwide. Wally's innovative strategies, ideas, and recommendations have been featured in dozens of publications and media outlets. He's personally coached and advised dozens of CEOs and top executives, and that doesn't even come close to this guy's bio. He also happens to be my business partner for Exceptional Leaders Lab. And I don't know, Wally, there's so many ways I could introduce you. What have I missed in that intro that you want to make sure our audience knows about you?
Uh, you didn't include the last book that we worked on together.
Hit
Leadership
it.
is a Verb, which is the newest and I think best of our books. So you missed that. Otherwise, it sounded great. Nothing about golf or pickleball, but we'll save that for a second session, hopefully.
Listen, I can't believe I missed that. So that's what I get for reading your bio off of our internet website.
Yeah.
We need to update that. Note to self. And listen, I've been kind of starting with every podcast to give people a sense of where people are sitting. I want everyone to feel like they're kind of sitting in on a front porch, listening in on a conversation. So let's tell everybody, where are you sitting right now?
I'm here in Norfolk, Virginia. We just moved into a new home, and I've got this office that I'm halfway put together, but very excited to be here. And thinking about all the front porches we have sat on to have these kinds of conversations all over the place, right?
Yeah, we have. Where's been your favorite?
Gosh, there's been a lot. Probably my favorite has been at your place in Tulsa. I love going there. I love all the people you know there. I love how knit into you are to your city and all the friends. Yeah, I like those. I love all the places we've traveled, but of course that's my favorite.
Super fun. Wally and I are business partners, so we have to have business meetings. We have to have them in, different parts of the world. So we've been to some fun places to do strategic planning and business planning, and all legit though, right?
100%.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, this podcast is called Shift Out Loud, and in thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about today, so many things come to mind. I know it would take 6 hours to unpack all the many stories that we have together, but I wanted to give people a sense of our partnership. I want to give them really a bigger sense of you. A lot of people know who I am. What they might not know is just how connected you and I have been in the business world. And really, I mean, I consider you my best friend. I can see, and that we can still say that after being in business together is huge. So there's been a lot of shifts over the years. What are some of the things that pop up in your mind when you knew this was going to be the conversation we were going to have?
Well, I didn't know this was going to be the conversation we're going to have. I'm trying to think of our relationship going from seeing you from across the country, work for the same company for a big chunk of time, but almost never together. We were never on the same team till the very end there, up to the eighth or ninth inning of that whole thing. Yeah, it was fun watching. I got to watch you grow up in business while I was growing up in business. We were kids, in our 20s at the time, and you always realize a kindred spirit, right? Even from across the country, even from across business units, you can see someone who thinks or prioritizes some of the same things, which I think we picked up pretty quickly. I remember a couple of formative bowling alley conversations about spending more time together.
Yes.
I got to watch you go through some personal changes before we were friends. You saw me go through a couple, which you sort of get a little character check there along the way too. So I've been a fan at a distance, and of course a big fan up close, as you know.
Oh my gosh, that's so well said and so accurate. I do remember the first time I remember kind of getting you being on my radar. We were young and we're still young in that company that we're talking about. And you got up and gave a speech and you like melted our faces off, but it was a 30-minute speech you gave in 11 minutes. And I just remember I could not write fast enough. And that's just kind of who you are. You're somebody that you have to be close enough to hear it. You better be leaning in, because you're that's not your, well, it is your strength actually now, but it wasn't back then. You remember
That's
that?
that's the answer to the question. Why is Tracy the public speaking part of our partnership? And why my content development, right? So we can skip that one now that that's out there. Yeah, yeah. If you need a fast public speaker, if you're having a 9-minute conference, I'm your man. I can get it done pretty fast. But yeah, yeah, I remember learning. Right? Who knows how to public speak? Right? It's a skill. It takes a while to sort it out. It comes naturally to a few people. You're lucky in that way. But yeah, I remember those meetings and remember how stressful that was standing up and
Oh.
doing that. The idea that you choose to do that for a living still boggles my mind.
Listen, you said I'm lucky that way. I want to say this. I was not lucky. I remember in the very beginning, and it was required in the company we were in that if you were doing well, you would be invited to this meeting once a year and you would have to stand up and for 30 minutes tell the secret to your success. So there were at its height, 140 kind of franchises, if you will, to describe to the audience. And so if yours was doing well, you would get up and tell all your secrets of how you were successful, and, a couple of mine went so terribly wrong. I'll
Yeah.
remind you. Do you remember that the
Of
president
course, yeah, and I remember why they went wrong too, because the we pretended in this company, just like a lot of those of you that are listening, that the audience is the other people that are your peers. But of course, the audience isn't those people at all. The audience is whoever the executive in the room is. And if you didn't talk and say what that audience wants to hear, there's a good chance you'll do an even shorter speech next year or none. And I remember you getting burned down a couple of times, even while we were clapping in the audience of one didn't like it. I remember that really clearly.
Oh
Do
my
you?
gosh. I
Yeah.
totally remember it, and for people to get a sense, our founder president at the time looked and sounded exactly like Jimmy Stewart. So you remember? He was like this kind of,
Well, let's say Jimmy Stewart with a mean streak. Can we say that?
yes, it's true.
Okay.
Well, it was confusing though because I thought, "Oh, he's kinda like my grandpa," and before you're right, before I am back to my seat, he goes, "That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard," and
Yeah.
I was like, "Is he talking about me?" And of course he
Yes, he
was.
was. Yeah, and a lot of people, that would have been the last public speech they ever gave, right? Like that. So kudos to you for stepping out of the flames there.
Well, listen, thank you. I remember what it was probably 10 years after that. It was you came up to me and you said, that is what that's what a good speaker sounds like. And I had two thoughts immediately. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that for Wally to say that. And the second is, you mean I've had 10 years of really shitty talks up until
Yeah, that's how your mind works. Hold it. That's a decade-long insult that I just endured for a 10-second compliment. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was exactly you were right, and I think for me, I just never thought of myself that this was gonna be the career, right? Did you
Yeah.
think that this was gonna be your career? So let's kinda pull that back a bit.
The current career?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. I
Good.
didn't know that I'd get paid for it. I didn't know that it would happen, when it did. But yeah, I always imagined we talked about that. I always imagined that eventually I'd get a chance to be in the conversations I wanted to be in, and that I hopefully would have done enough of the work to make sure I could bring some substance to those conversations. So yeah, that was always in the plan. I didn't know how, I didn't have a bridge to get there, but that was always what I was thinking. Sure.
Oh, I did a podcast with Trisha Brook, a couple of weeks ago, and she says, once you let go of the how, amazing things can happen. You've been like that. You're pretty good to go to be a great goal setter and to kind of see things begin with the end in mind, all that great
Try.
stuff that we are
Yeah.
reared on.
I'm gonna try it. Yeah, it doesn't always work, but yeah, the goals and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of our early work that got some attention was around goals, as you'll remember. And yeah, it's still right at the center of my screen all the time as far as what I'm talking about and focused on. And it's weird because nowadays, there's a little bit of cynicism associated with it because they get thrown around the light version of goals, the goal conversation that doesn't attach the habits piece, right? Which is the easy, wishful way. Of course, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about robust goals that have the framework underneath to make sure they happen. And those, you can trust those.
Let's stay there for a minute because you have been such a great example for me and lots of people that you have influenced. Tell the audience a bit about how you approach your goal setting.
So goals for me are very personal and then they become businessy after that. So the personal part is goals have always been a conversation between my kids and myself about what they want to be, how they want to be, who they want to be. And because of that, they're very individual kids. So much so that they really aren't accomplishing any of my goals for them at all, but accomplishing all of their own goals, which are interesting. Like my son, Jake, his goal is to live with the least possible amount of responsibility. which is incredibly compelling, right?
He's
And
doing
had
it
I been
right.
this kid is a philosophy major, ethics minor. Obviously, he's got his stuff sorted out, and so he's living this life where okay, I have no responsibility to anybody, and I mostly do the things I want to do. Not doesn't owe any money, doesn't have any even debt responsibility. So it's interesting. And my daughter always just wanted to work in music and had three false starts. Where the first thing in music, not as a performer, but in the venue business. Now she's in sales and she sells, as you know, vinyl records all over the world, and she's crushing it. But and then with my wife, Rhonda, we have an annual trip we take, as you know, Tracy, each year, someplace exotic. This will be our 21st year going somewhere. And I mean exotic, like we've been all over the world for our goal setting trip. And we sit down and organize all of our thoughts and what we're trying to get done in that forthcoming year. And we don't always get them, but just the act of sitting down and having that conversation with each other and having a trip for that purpose seems to have a little bit of magic with it. I know you've tried a few of those too, right?
Yeah. Where's been your favorite place that you all have gone?
Probably Costa Rica. So much so we went back a couple of times. There we've been to the New York City main library branch there a couple of times that has this amazing. It's called the Reading Room. That's gilded and it's 9 stories tall and it's all these famous novels have been written there and everything. So that's probably the most scenic. But I'm a big fan of umbrella drinks and beaches, as you know.
I
So that
do.
always helps to lubricate the goals a little bit.
Oh, I do know that. And I mean, when we, think about the shifting piece of this conversation, that's like a built-in shift that happens every year, right? I think just the exercise of doing goals, it makes you think a little bit differently. As you look back, what were some of the big shifts for you? Like if you want to go chronologically or however you want that you go, there was something that happened there. And was there somebody that assisted you in that shift? Was it something that you decided you wanted? Tell us a bit more about that.
Gosh, I mean, the early one was that I think of as being kind of formative, was just being a kid that moved around a lot. So my dad was a telephone installer, and I went to 11 schools between kindergarten and being a senior in high school. So I was always introducing myself, which taught me a few things. It makes you an introvert, even if you weren't going to be one, but it also makes you realize that you can reinvent yourself, right? So you can go to this new school and be one of the jocks. You can go to the new school and be a bully. You can go to the new school and be one of the smart kids. Like all these things, be a pothead, whatever you're going to be at your next school. That was one. And then later on, you were part of the biggest one of my adult life, which was January of 2017, having a lot of identity, having a lot of momentum and life experience wrapped up in this job, right? And getting fired, right? Unceremoniously from that job by the private equity company that had bought us. That was probably the biggest shift. And we'd never talked about is what had happened there already. And I think you probably even forgot this. So I had been put to task by the new leadership to change the cost model around the best we could for the business. And that included eliminating all of our physical offices and firing 2 layers of management, dozens of friends, dozens of colleagues, you'll remember, and
Mhm.
finally moving all of our training away from in person into a virtual environment. So if we did all that stuff, the promise was we'll be able to keep you around, sort of, we need to fix this cost structure. And of course, as soon as those things were done, see ya. Right. So I basically felt like, as you did, that I'd sort of sold my soul to this corporate entity in order to see if we could make this thing go at a third of the cost. And as soon as that happened, we got to go too. So remember the text?
Oh my gosh. Yes, you gotta tell 'em about it. I wanna do one other thing. I have a different lead up to that though, because I was sure we were gonna be fired for 2 years,
Yeah.
and then I turned the corner and thought, "Nope, they're gonna keep us." So emotionally, I was all ready, and then when it didn't happen, it actually made me more invested, I think, like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna make it through."
Yeah.
And
Well, we
just
were
at the
having a
time.
different experience through there for sure,
Yeah.
because you were not as public for a while there, where all this happened as much as you had been, and sort of hunkered down. And I had sort of joined the other team a little bit, at
Yes,
least
you had.
in my head. And so I felt like the best work I can do here is as a double agent. That was my thought. Like I'm going to be a double agent. I'm working on behalf of my old friends and colleagues. I'm going to work for the suits, right? So as soon as I delivered on what the suits wanted, right, I got to join all my friends and colleagues in the unemployment world. But it was
Listen.
obviously the best thing that ever happened. How did it hit you?
Oh my gosh. You can tell that piece of the story, but I remember doing my goal setting and, all the things I wanted with my team and really just probably taking it to a level I'd never been before. So when the call came, I was so incredibly devastated, and I got on a call 2 hours, you will remember this, after I had done an all-company call and told everybody in the organization that there's gonna be a change in the commission structure and how much I supported the change, and it was the
Selling
best
your
thing for the
soul. Yep.
organization. So, I mean, I was all in and feeling one way, acting another, but, thinking, "Okay." So I felt incredibly, used at that point. So I get on my call, it's 2 o'clock. What was the date? January what?
17th, I
January
think, or
7th?
January 22nd or
So,
something. Yeah,
like,
got
yeah,
it over there on
yeah.
the wall.
It
Yeah.
was a it was a cold, dark day. And I get on the call, and, Steve Dobie is, on there, and, like, I'd never been fired my whole life,
Me
so,
either. Yeah.
yeah, that was, so the moment HR is on the line, I
It's
just
on.
started bawling. I muted. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm getting fired." And so you take it from there.
Well, yeah, we were having the same experience. So I get a text. Now I'm on a call, right? And you're gathering yourself, I guess. And I get this text from Tracy. It says, I just got fired, period. And I write back, I'm actually in the middle of getting fired when I get this text. And I write back, not quite, I'm not in the same headspace as you were. I'm more pissed. And I write back, I'm getting fired right now. And you said, are you fucking with me? And I said,
I
no.
thought you were.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. No.
Oh my god, but and you for so everybody will know if you ever do get to come into my house, I have it prominently displayed. Wally sent it to me as a Christmas present, our text exchange, but I couldn't believe how relieved you were and how devastated I was.
Yeah, I never completely understood how that landed differently for us. I don't know. I felt I was cauterized a little bit emotionally because I'd already gone around on the trail of tears firing everybody. So it almost felt like I deserved it, maybe. I don't know.
That's true, you were involved in a lot of those conversations. I was watching it happen, and, yeah, I was probably more in the consoling business at that point.
Probably. Yeah, you're
But
on the other.
listen, that shift, we should write a book about what happens when you get fired. Like that shift for me was so weird because all of a sudden we have no email access, no anything. So I'm going to ask you in a minute what you did. I can tell you what I did that for an hour. I started deleting all of my recurring meetings. I weirdly stayed right in my computer and
Yeah.
kept
Change your
doing what
schedule.
I did just
Oh,
change
my
my
Tuesday
schedule.
just opened up. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm available for that, facial, all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
turns out. Yeah, mine
Uh,
was I went right you went to, organize yourself mode for sure. I went into just what you said, goal setting and planning modes. I went and wiped my whiteboard clean and started figuring out what we had to sell um, to stay financially. And I want to just tell your audience that we were in our 50s. This is not the kid part of the story. I was 52, Tracy was 50, I think. And yeah, so it's a big deal when you're this age and having to make a big job switch. So that ends up being back to the original point. That's the shift of my life. 52 years are terminated, and I get to shift or not. It's the decision, right? It's the
right.
either I go and sign up with somebody else and continue to be a mid level, whatever, doing something in fintech or something like that, or this is the moment we make our jump, right? And say, okay, it's time to do it. I couldn't do it with the cost structure I had with my lifestyle at that time. So as you know, sold a house, sold a beach house that I was lucky to have, sold a lot of the things that would have reflected on the privilege that I'd had leading up to that point. Everything I could do just to make a big pile of money so that I don't have to say yes to a new job right away and we could start our thing.
You were inspiring to me because, as you know, I was doing exactly the same thing. I was selling things not at the I mean, I remember you were like the first person on Facebook Marketplace or something.
Take it all. Yeah, we need cash. Yeah, cashed out of everything.
You were selling it all. It was but and I was like, okay, I need to be selling, some of that stuff." But I think for me, when you kept saying, "I'm doing this because I am not gonna go back to corporate America," and you said to me very early on, we're gonna be, courted by a lot of people, so we have to know now what we want. Do you want" and you were basically saying, "Are we gonna do this?
Well,
Or are we gonna, give in to, the suits that are about to start
right.
calling us?" And I'm
No, and that
glad we
was
had the conversation.
yeah, no, that was me trying to talk myself. I mean, I don't have it. I didn't have that kind of, I'd always been very opportunity focused. That is not me. I read all the quotes. I've seen all the posters, take your chance. You're the only one who can do it, hang in there. But it doesn't feel like that in the moment. And so, yeah, we had to, everything must go. My wife sold her 2 location retail store, successful retail store to build up some more money. And I said no to 2 really great offers for great
Mhm.
companies I would have loved to have worked for at a different time in my life. So, yeah, nothing about that was easy. And of course, leadership consulting companies they don't start making money on day 1, do they?
It turns out.
So that was a surprise. I
Yeah.
thought there was some bunch of clients waiting on us, but no.
Oh my gosh, and one of the problems, we had been so generous with our material. So just to give our audience, Wally is the king of content, and if I'm standing on stage delivering a, PowerPoint Exceptional Leaders Lab speech, Wally has his hands are all over. He's done all of it, throws it over to the fence. I socialize it a bit with the audience, and that's kind of, our lane. So I deliver it and, curate the experience, but the content. So for you in that doing the content, I felt a lot of pressure because you were and you did too, I know. You were like, "Well, I'm gonna do all this, but you gotta get out in front of some people." And I remember thinking, "But I've
Oh,
been doing it for free. Like, I
yeah,
haven't been
no,
charging."
those were uncomfortable I remember you asking me exactly how much money do you need to make?
That's right.
We're figuring that's a level of conversation. Well, figure it out because we'll get going. Yeah, and it put a lot of pressure on you as a producer. We had to get some new content out there. We'd given a lot to the old company that was still using it. Um,
Oh,
yeah, but
but
then we got busy. We started to have some success with the book, which would be released very just in front of the firing, luckily. And yeah, so then it goes off. But the shift for me is this move from working for other people to working for ourselves, kind of being in the conversations we want to be in. I didn't want another boss. I haven't had a lot of luck with bosses. It's weird to be someone who spends all his time talking about leadership. I've never had a great boss yet. So, yeah, what's your experience with that?
well, since, you were my boss at one point, so I'll say
Oh, you've had
you
one
were I've had
exceptional.
some of the greatest leaders ever,
I don't know how good of a boss I was for you.
you were
You have some
uh,
critiques.
listen, there's 2 things about you there's so many, but that immediately came to mind when I thought of you as my boss. One of them is you were a truth teller as you are to this day. You were, unafraid of the conflict, knowing that I was gonna probably have a big reaction. You still gave me the information. So you were willing to stand in the fire with me so I would be better. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, and I could cry, and I'm not going to, but just how unbelievably supportive you were and selfless you were and still are in our partnership. Like, I cannot believe how selfless you are with recognition and the limelight and you're always there, ever present in the background, but you don't hear the applause. You don't hear
Yeah.
how,
Well, that's
well received our stuff is. So
That's so
those are
nice.
2
Yeah,
things
I
that
I miss it sometimes. I like hearing that, but we're in this for a different reason, right? So you don't need the limelight either, but it's the reflection of your work, and so it's the only way you have to evaluate the impact you're making. Our go-to analogy or metaphor has always been Elton John and Bernie Taupin, right? And
right, that's
you
right.
ever heard of Bernie Taupin? No, exactly. He's the guy that wrote all the songs. Yeah, I always say that to people, and they ask, "How do we work?" I go, "Well, you've heard of Bernie Taupin, right?" And they go, "No." I go, "See, that's how it works."
And
But
what is so funny about that is when you send me the song, if you will, and then we've been working together a lot. We'll talk about the shift because of the pandemic in a minute, but you send it with these very specific Wallyisms and the intention of it, and I hear it very differently. So sometimes it's been a surprise. I know for
oh,
you,
yeah.
not
Well, and extending the comparison there, I didn't know this till I saw the movie about those 2, Elton and Bernie, that he sends over ballads that Elton turns into rockers, and he sends over rockers that Elton turns into ballads. I mean, he can't, hands off. You can't affect how it's gonna be stylized, how it's gonna be delivered. So exactly like us. Whenever we present together, we say it every time, like, "Why do you do it like that?" Or you say it to me, "I never knew that's how you meant that to go." So, and
I
your
know.
improvements, your changes are usually improvements, certainly in how you can get the audience to understand what we're trying to get to. So,
Well, I think here, I'm gonna tell you what I believe. I'm gonna pat us on the backs, is if anybody's still listening, they're probably not, but if they are, I think one of the things that's made our material so relevant is there isn't anything in one of those books, there's nothing in one of those PowerPoints, there's nothing in a blog that you and I have not lived in 30 years in corporate America. So I think that the fact that we are not talking about what it should be, we've talked about where we've missed the mark. I mean, most of our material comes from how shitty of a leader I
Oh,
was anyway, right? I've
well,
made so many mistakes.
we've had a front row seat. And then now, I don't know how many executive coaching clients we have between us, but certainly in the 30s or 40s, and you get a front row seat to watch every decision being made. And I don't know why more executive coaches don't write books or do presentations, because it really is the best vantage point I've ever seen for understanding what works and what doesn't work in leadership. Like practically, just like a football game, you send in a play, you see immediately, you got 10 seconds later, you know exactly what worked about it, what didn't. And the same thing happens in executive coaching. So it's a really interesting case study loaded job to be in, right? You just see it again and again, what works,
For
what
sure.
doesn't.
For sure. Listen, the other shift happened. So we had two pretty big shifts. We are fired and we start in Exceptional Leaders Lab. And then when the pandemic hits, talk about that shift, because we went from being well, I'll let you, I won't steal the line.
Well,
What is your experience?
I would say we went from being an audience driven, public speaking fueled training company, which was basically means that's a fancy way to say Tracy on stage doing her thing all over the world every single week. Those of you who don't know, Tracy was on a plane or planes every single week, multiple stops every single week of the year, starting in January and finishing usually in October, November. Um, Mind-boggling amount of travel. I don't even know what platinum diamond encrusted status you have now. There probably isn't even a name for it.
It's
But anyway,
called,
that was our
it's
business.
called, it is, it's called Concierge Key, just so you know.
Concierge key. I wrote that down. I'll never get that. So I'm gonna write it.
That's your goal, is to never get it.
It is my goal. Oh yeah, I won't get close to it. Yeah, so we're this business, right? Like put it out there. Let's refresh our material. Have they seen this? No, let's show them that. All that stuff, all that kind of work too. Okay, that doesn't happen anymore. What are we going to do now? And we had a really interesting chunk of experience where for 3 years, long, long time ago, we had done virtual training for this company in front of hundreds of people. We had more at one point. Tracy Spears and myself had more virtual training experience than anybody in America, I bet, for
I think
salespeople at
so.
least. Weeks and weeks and weeks of it. So it turned out we already knew how to do that. We already knew how to do the screen. We knew how to interact. We knew how to get materials to people, content, all that. So anyway, there's a moment. Hey, we know this stuff. Let's get busy. And so, yeah, repurposed all of our content for virtual delivery. The other one for me was the executive coaching, and everybody was just as confused as we were in that time, and people needed more advice and ears, right, for listening to all these problems. How did it feel to you going through all that?
Well, so at the going into the pandemic, and I had flown like 213,000 miles the year before, and had like 42 booked gigs for that next year. That would be 2020. And I remember, as you know, maybe some of the audience doesn't know. So I was one of the early COVID victims, if you will. And what
Tracy, you were the first person I knew who got COVID. You were the first person I've heard of, though, because not in my own circle, but the circle beyond that too. Like nobody's relatives had it yet, and you had it like for real too. And it almost got you.
It did, and I remember coming out of that fog, and you were so great through all of it, like, just, "Okay, well, how," you kept checking, "How are you?" You're the reason, by the way, that I did go to the hospital eventually. I know you remember that part of the story, which I won't bore everybody with that, but I remember at some point coming out of it and having, like, our first meeting, and you said, "How are you feeling? Good, or you think you're better?" "Yes." And you said, "Okay, good. Well, we've, transitioned to an online leadership company." So, and you kind of reintroduced me, and you had been, I mean, working like you do, middle of the night, trying to create a new business for us. That you made that shift so easy for me, and for our company, because you said, "Here it is," and you had the marketing done. You'd even been on a couple of big calls for the Tulsa Chamber, if you remember. I kind of remember that, but I was still
Yeah, I remember
pretty much
stepping in a couple of those. Yeah, and you were luckily able to transfer as much influence and emotion in that two-dimensional way as you do in three dimensions. So that's no accident, but it was, yeah, it was amazing. And I remember we were adding up the cost of the canceled gigs, deep into the six figures, right?
Oh,
All
yeah.
right, $175,000 gone, and it's not like it comes back. Those
Yeah.
didn't get rescheduled. Those are
Uh,
gone. They're still gone. Yeah, so it was very dramatic, especially having just gone through that a couple years before.
yeah. Well, that shift. So what do you believe has been the hardest shift? Because everybody went through that, right? Our organization did. But as you're doing a lot of executive coaching, what do you think the shift? I know the shift has gone to more virtual, and what's your take on it now? How are we a couple of years out from the beginning of that and kind of barely coming out of it? What do you think has been the biggest shift in corporate America?
Gosh, I don't know if it's been made yet. I think I'd rather say what I think it's gonna be, and it's gonna be focus. I think focus is the new, we've talked about it, right? We call it focus is the new IQ, right? Everybody knows everything. We'll have all have access to all the information there is. It's not who's the smartest person in the room anymore, right? It's who's the most focused person in the room. And we've all learned to go a mile wide, but only an inch deep. And if you're an executive or a leader and you're that person that can go deep on something and start it and consider it and propose it, right? And socialize it and finish it and execute it and then do the study behind it. You're amazing, right? There's so few people. I run into one a month that can do all that stuff now. So I think it's going to be really interesting how we're going to learn or relearn how to do that again when so many people, there's smarter people than us right now in a meeting, as you know, Tracy, figuring out how to keep us from focusing. Dozens of them, right? And they're sitting around having this meeting. Okay, what if it lights up? What if we can attach it to their body? Hold it. What if we can attach it to their body? Like they're going to win, right? So a few people are going to have to figure out, and it's not a conspiracy. We all like it. So we're volunteering to this attention span reduction. What do you think? That's my fear? That's what I think is going to happen. I'm still working out what we can do about it.
What's interesting, well, I'll just tag on to that and say that, we used to get a lot of recognition by proximity, and the fact that we're not in offices as much, we're not, that built-in camaraderie or affinity bias as we know it, the halo effect, all those things are fading away. People are being more evaluated by what they can actually produce. And what I'm seeing is people are not really good at marketing themselves. People are not really good. I spend a lot of time in my executive coaching sessions talking about how can you not only make sure that you know what are the three or four things you should be doing, but how are you communicating that back? And that doesn't matter where you sit in the organization, to be able to be super strategic about this is what I'm doing because we knew we were working because we were on Zoom and we saw each other, and now people are like, "I'm not gonna get on Zoom 10 thank goodness, 10 hours a day anymore." So people have to be more strategic about how they talk about their value. So
Yeah.
that's what I
Oh, that's a
think
really
is.
good. That's really smart. And there used to be this character. We remember, like all of us have these characters, the cheerleader or the go along guy who's just sort of part of productive groups, who moves along socially with groups and appears to be and probably is contributing to them somehow. That person's in trouble, right? How are you going to be able to demonstrate? Just like you said, like what can I do over here by myself to look like I'm moving in a herd of productive people in a way that helps? Who knows? That person may be right,
Yep,
obsolete.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's, if personality has been your secret weapon, that's been good. It'll be harder to hide, I think, now.
Right.
I think.
No,
Yeah.
no, show me some value, influence some outcome. Yeah, that's a really good call out. And I don't even know what you do about that. You almost have to go to work on your skill set, right? You're seeing that though reflected in these numbers about what people like, these numbers around retention and why people stay loyal to employers. And you also, I know you watch this stuff the same way I do. You saw investing in my professional development just overcome compensation as the most important thing for talented people. So if you're willing to invest in my professional development, I'll hang around, even if you're not the person who's going to pay me the most, right? That says a lot,
Yeah.
seems like, right?
Well, you and I are sitting in a seat that benefits a lot from that, thank goodness, because as you know, I mean, we're saying no a lot right now, because I do think that the training that, leadership training or whatever training you can provide to your organization, there is a high ROI for that. So maybe we should plug our online courses right now. So we have created some online courses for just this reason. We can't get to everyone, and we wanted a lower ticket entry into the organization. So I don't know. I think that new online course that we have. I'll let you do the quick commercial for that.
Yeah, so we're trying to make it easier for that person, the person we're describing, who needs to figure out a way to level up their influence, their impact, deliverables, just things that are tangible performance for their companies. And we call it leveling up, how managers become leaders. And I think it's really good. It's 90 minutes. We've made it really affordable. It's only $50. And the goal there is not how much can we sell it for, but how many people can we get this to? And so, it reflects some production costs and all of that. We're hoping to get it out there to a lot of you, and I promise you that it'll be 90 minutes well spent. There's 5 sections. You can stop the sections individually. You keep the registration as long as you like. So, yeah, but it's aimed at that person, not someone who's not successful, not someone who's not good at what they do, but someone who's in the process of trying to figure out how to level up in such a way that their performance will be more visible, right? That'll be a little bit more memorable.
Good commercial. Nice.
Thanks.
So I'll do a we'll ELL will sponsor this podcast today. Uh,
Nice.
so listen, as we wind down to this, what's the shift yet to come for you?
Yeah, I know this. So the shift, I haven't made any progress at all, and I'm going to need your help with this on as
Uh-oh.
an accountability partner. So my shift needs to be away from sort of ambition-driven, compulsive busyness to a little bit more thoughtful, let's say mindful, intentional way of going about my work. So I want to pick my spots. I know I can be of value here. I'm going to do that. Maybe I won't be quite as valuable here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to put more emphasis on my personal stuff than I am on my business stuff. And this other instance, like making choices like that. I don't make any of those choices now. I just go to whatever's, I'm tuned to next, as you know. I don't know how to get off that track. So this is where I'm having to learn a little bit. Any suggestions you have or your audience has, I would welcome them. That's me. How about you?
Oh my gosh, I just heard you say that we're not gonna be on as many calls together. Yeah, listen.
Or I said, you're going to get more of me when we are.
Yeah, that's fair. You've always brought forth the balance part of the conversation. Whether you feel like you're doing it or not, you always say, "I'm going to spend more time playing golf. I'm going to spend more time,
While
taking
being the
care."
worst example of that there is. Yeah, that's
But
right.
you at least try, where I have not been even willing, I think as willing to carve out some time. So I do think we should at least take a half day Friday off now, so I
Yeah.
can at least go to
Well,
that.
so I've been asking my client this question. And when I ask myself, I don't like the answer. And the question is, what would a stranger looking at your schedule say the most important thing in your life is?
Ooh.
And mine would be Zoom calls and work and coaching others. And I only work with people I admire now. So I've dialed it down there. I don't work with anybody that I don't admire. So that's one filter. But yeah, what would yours? What would that stranger say?
Yeah, then I'm on a plane all the time, yeah. I mean, I am back to pre-pandemic travel right now. I'll tell you with Carol, so as you know, I do a little, work with Carol Seymour and Signature Leaders, and she puts everyone through this great exercise, which is blank calendar. Put you on there first, 0 work stuff, like, you can't do anything except just the stuff that, like, what are you trying to do? Are you walking the dogs? Do you wanna be with your family? Is it morning? And so you start with that, and then you fill in the calendar with the 3 to 5 things that 80% of your time should be spent on, and so you fit that into your calendar, and then the other 20% you kind of put in the margins. And what's interesting about that is that when you start with you first and you're fitting in your work stuff, you actually look at that and go, well, there's plenty of time for all of that. But if you don't schedule it, as you know, if you don't say in this block is going to be I'm going to go ride my bike 20 miles. If you don't put that in there, then then you go, oh well, actually I have some time free that morning, and that's where I'm at. I'm in this place where I'm trying to be more intentional with actually changing my schedule. So I wanna get back on the bike. I haven't
Yeah.
been on the bike, and yeah, so I'm with you.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll have our meeting in October and we'll talk through how we can support each other in this. Be a little bit more intentional about it. I'm starting to feel like I give that advice all day, every day to other people.
Yeah.
So eventually I got to listen, right? And so,
Well,
yeah,
the painter's house is never painted. That's what they
yeah,
say,
that's right.
right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, I want to say a giant thank you to you, not only for being willing to jump on here and be on this call, but just for being you. You're the best business partner I could have ever hoped for, and I'm super grateful for you and all we have built. And I know there's still a lot yet to come. So
Oh, so much. And I know you've got a lot of big fans, but I know you'll always know who the biggest is. And thank you for including me here. And I'll look forward to our next conversation.
sounds good. Thanks, Wally.
All right.